Welcome to our deep dive into the world of English idioms.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered why we say things like break a leg when we mean good luck?
Or spill the beans.
Yeah, exactly.
When you want to say, like, tell a secret.
Yeah, and that's the magic of idioms.
Yeah.
You know, these phrases with hidden meanings that add color and personality to our language.
Yeah, it's fascinating how idioms can give you a glimpse into the history and the culture of a language. They're like little time capsules. You know, they preserve these little bits of wisdom and humor and even superstition from generations past.
I love that little time capsules. That's so true. And today we're going to be exploring 150 of these quirky expressions. So get ready for some serious aha moments as we kind of uncover their origins and how they're used in everyday conversation.
Think of idioms as like a secret code to unlock fluency.
Oh, I like that.
It's not just about understanding the words themselves, but really grasping that cultural context and those subtle shades of meaning they convey.
And I think that's one of the things that can make learning a language so challenging, is that you can know what all the words mean, but then someone says something and you're like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, it's an idiom.
It's an idiom, right?
Yeah, and using idioms can make you sound more natural and confident in your English.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that idioms are a form of figurative language.
Okay.
So their meanings can't be understood literally.
So if someone says it's raining cats and dogs, you don't need to like run for cover.
No.
Right.
It just means it's raining really hard.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So are you ready to kick off our idiom adventure?
I am. I'm so excited.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do it.
Let's start with some idioms you've probably heard a million times, like break the ice.
Yeah, piece of cake.
Yeah, those are so common we often don't even realize they're idioms.
What's interesting is that break the ice actually likely originated from the literal act of breaking ice on frozen waterways to create a passage for ships.
Wow.
So it's fascinating how this physical act then became a metaphor for easing social tension and starting a conversation.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
It's really cool.
It makes you realize that even the simplest idioms have a story behind them. And sometimes those stories are surprisingly ancient. For example, spill the beans, meaning to reveal a secret, might actually trace back to ancient Greece.
Isn't that wild?
Ancient Greece, really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so back then, they had this unique voting system using beans. White beans were a yes vote.
Okay.
And black beans were a no vote. So if someone accidentally spilled the container holding the beans,
oh no,
it would reveal the outcome of the vote prematurely.
So spilling the beans literally meant spoiling the secret of the vote.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It's incredible how a phrase from thousands of years ago is still relevant today.
It really is.
It highlights that enduring power of idioms and how they connect us to the past.
I love that linguistic fossils.
I love that.
Carrying traces of history and culture through time.
Yes.
So we've covered some everyday idioms, but let's level up and explore those that reign supreme in the workplace. Think about phrases like back to the drawing board.
The ball is in your court.
Yeah, love that one. These idioms are essential for navigating the professional world. They convey these complex ideas concisely and efficiently, adding a touch of sophistication to your communication.
Yeah, sure.
I'm definitely guilty of using back to the drawing board whenever a project hits a snag.
Yeah.
It's like a universal signal to regroup and rethink our strategy.
Exactly. And the ball is in your court is all about delegation and responsibility.
Yeah.
It makes it very clear who's in charge of taking the next step.
And so these idioms aren't just about sounding professional. They actually reflect these core concepts of teamwork, problem solving, and leadership.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, understanding these idioms can make you a more effective communicator in a professional setting, helping you to build stronger relationships with colleagues and clients.
Okay, let's switch gears and get a little more personal. Ready to dive into the world of relationships and all those messy, wonderful social dynamics.
Oh, yes. This is going to be good.
I know this is a juicy one.
I think this will be a particularly rich area to explore.
Yeah.
After all, relationships are at the heart of human experience. And idioms often provide such a unique lens to view these complexities.
Totally. And we've got a whole arsenal of idioms to describe those special bonds, from two peas in a pod for those inseparable friendships.
And for those instant connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know when you meet someone and you just feel like you've known them forever?
Exactly.
And of course, there's the dreaded putting your foot in your mouth scenario.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Oh, tell me about it.
That awkward moment when you say something unintentionally offensive or embarrassing, and you're like, I wish I could just like suck those words back in.
Oh, yeah. It just makes you cringe.
I know.
But hey, it's part of being human, right?
It certainly is.
Yeah. And these idioms, while often humorous, highlight the importance of careful communication.
Right.
Especially in sensitive situations.
Especially in sensitive situations.
Speaking of sensitive situations, what about seeing eye to eye?
Yeah, that one's all about finding common ground, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, seeing eye to eye implies agreement and harmony.
Yeah.
Suggesting a shared perspective or understanding.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of conflict and disagreement.
And then there's the apple of one's eye. That phrase always conjures up images of someone being deeply cherished and adored, like a parent's love for a child.
It's a beautiful idiom that captures the essence of pure affection and admiration.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that language has the power to express those most profound emotions.
Yeah.
Even those that are really hard to articulate directly.
All right, let's talk about heartbreak. I know it's a heavy topic.
Okay.
But we have to acknowledge that relationships aren't always sunshine and rainbows.
Of course not. Breaking someone's heart goes beyond just disappointment or sadness. It implies a deep emotional wound, a sense of betrayal and loss that can be incredibly painful to experience.
And sometimes in relationships, we find ourselves like bending over backwards to please the other person.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting is that this idiom literally means like contorting yourself into this unnatural position, which perfectly captures that feeling of going to extremes to accommodate someone else's needs.
It's a reminder that balance is key in any relationship.
Yeah.
While it's important to be considerate and supportive, constantly bending over backwards can lead to resentment and an unhealthy dynamic.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot between being accommodating and maintaining your own sense of self.
Exactly. And sometimes it's about recognizing when to kind of walk on eggshells,
Yeah.
especially in those delicate situations where one wrong word could lead to conflict.
Okay, one last idiom for this category. Get something off your chest.
Yes.
What does that imply in terms of communication?
It's about expressing something that's been weighing on you, releasing those pent-up emotions through open and honest communication. It's like a verbal exhale, a way to clear the air and find relief.
We've covered a lot of ground in the world of relationship idioms.
We have.
It's amazing how these phrases capture the nuances of human connection.
Yes.
From the highs of love and friendship to the lows of heartbreak and conflict.
Indeed. And it's a reminder that language is a really powerful tool for navigating those complexities of relationships.
Yeah.
And expressing that full spectrum of human emotion.
Huh.
It's interesting how some relationship idioms can have both, positive and negative connotations.
Oh, yeah.
For example, like two peas in a pod can describe a close, harmonious friendship.
Right.
But it can also suggest a lack of individuality if two people are just too similar.
That's a good point. It's all about the context.
Exactly.
And how the idiom is used.
All right.
It reminds us that language is fluid and adaptable, just like relationships themselves.
Speaking of adaptability, let's shift gears to a different realm of experience, the natural world. Even weather and nature have inspired a whole host of idioms.
Oh, yeah, like come rain or shine. That one always makes me think of like unwavering commitment and determination.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
And it reminds us that life throws all sorts of challenges our way, but we have that resilience to kind of face them head on.
Yeah. And what about weathering the storm?
Ooh.
That one seems particularly relevant in today's world. We're constantly bombarded with change and uncertainty.
It's a metaphor for navigating difficult times, enduring hardship, and emerging stronger on the other side.
Right.
It speaks to that human capacity for resilience and adaptation.
It's fascinating how different cultures use weather metaphors in unique ways.
Right.
For example, in some cultures, a storm might represent chaos and destruction, while in others, it symbolizes a cleansing or a renewal.
That's a great point. It highlights how idioms are so deeply embedded in cultural perspectives and worldviews.
Yeah.
They reflect the way people perceive and interact with the world around them.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit peckish after all this talk about weather.
Okay.
How about we explore some delicious idioms related to food and health?
Oh, I'm always up for a linguistic feast.
Me too.
Food idioms are particularly interesting because they often tap into our sensory experiences and those cultural associations.
For example, spill the beans is a classic food idiom. We already discussed it.
Right.
But it's worth revisiting in this context. Imagine accidentally knocking over a bowl of beans, creates a mess, and reveals what was once hidden.
It's a very vivid metaphor for revealing a secret.
Yes.
Often unintentionally.
Yeah.
And it highlights how food imagery can make abstract concepts more concrete and relatable.
Yeah, and who hasn't encountered something that's their cup of tea?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a polite way of saying, nope, not for me.
It's like a gentle decline wrapped in a warm beverage.
Exactly. And it speaks to the importance of personal preferences and acknowledging that not everything is for everyone.
Right.
Okay, here's one that always makes me laugh in a pickle. Oh, I love that one.
It perfectly captures that feeling of being stuck in a tricky situation.
It does.
Kind of like a cucumber trapped in a jar.
It's such a humorous image, but it effectively conveys a sense of being trapped or in a predicament.
Right.
And it's a reminder that even in challenging times, a touch of humor can help lighten the mood.
Absolutely. And speaking of humor, let's not forget about the animal kingdom.
Oh, yes.
Idioms inspired by animals are always so vivid and memorable. Like, let the cat out of the bag or hold your horses.
Animal idioms often draw on our observations of animal behavior.
Right.
And those symbolic meanings that we attach to different creatures, for example, cats, are often associated with secrecy, which explains why letting the cat out of the bag means revealing a secret.
Makes sense. And horses are known for their speed and power.
Yeah.
So hold your horses makes sense as a way to tell someone to slow down or wait.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that those symbolic meanings of animals can vary across cultures.
Oh, interesting. For example, in some cultures, a fox might represent cunning and trickery, while in others, it's seen as a wise and benevolent creature.
So even within these animal idioms, there are these layers of cultural interpretation that add to their richness and complexity.
Absolutely. And it really underscores the importance of considering that cultural context when you're interpreting idioms, as their meanings can shift depending on who's using them and in what situation.
Okay, let's take a quick detour back to everyday life. There are so many idioms that we use without even thinking about their origins.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like once in a blue moon or bite the bullet.
Once in a blue moon is a great example of an idiom that paints such a vivid picture in our minds.
Yeah.
We can almost visualize that rare and elusive blue moon representing something that happens very infrequently.
And bite the bullet. That one always makes me cringe a little.
Oh, yeah.
It evokes that feeling of having to face something unpleasant or difficult head on, like biting down on a hard object.
Right. It's thought to have originated from the practice of having soldiers bite down on a bullet during surgery in the absence of anesthesia.
Ouch.
It speaks to the human capacity for enduring pain and hardship when necessary.
Okay, before we move on, I have to ask, what are some of your personal favorite idioms?
Oh, that's a good question.
The ones that you find particularly interesting or amusing.
You know, I'm particularly fond of kick the bucket.
Okay.
It's just such a blunt and unexpected way to describe death.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that language can be playful and irreverent, even when dealing with those serious subjects.
I love that one too. It's so darkly humorous.
It is.
And it shows how idioms can add a touch of levity to even the most somber topics. What about you? Do you have any favorites?
Oh, I have so many.
I bet.
But one that always comes to mind is rule of thumb.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by its origin. Apparently, it stems from an old law that allowed a man to beat his wife with a stick no thicker than his thumb.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, that law is long gone. Thankfully.
But the idiom persists as a way to describe like a general principle or guideline.
It's a fascinating example of how an idiom's origin can be completely at odds with its modern usage.
Totally.
It highlights that evolving nature of language and how meanings can shift over time.
Okay, let's dive into another category that's rich with idioms, emotions, and reactions.
Okay.
We've got phrases like barking up the wrong tree for those moments when we're completely misguided, and on cloud nine for those times when we're just overflowing with happiness.
These idioms are like emotional shorthand, allowing us to express those complex feelings in a concise and relatable way.
And they often use vivid imagery to convey those emotions. For example, barking up the wrong tree conjures up this image of a dog frantically barking at a tree that doesn't contain its prey.
Right.
Perfectly capturing that feeling of being on the wrong track.
And on cloud nine evokes that sense of blissful euphoria, as if you're floating high above the world on a fluffy white cloud.
It's interesting how some emotional idioms are universal, reflecting those shared human experiences across cultures, while others are more specific to particular languages or regions.
That's true. It highlights the interplay between those universal human emotions and the diverse ways that cultures express and interpret those feelings.
Oh, okay. Ready for another round of wordplay?
I am. Bring it on.
Let's explore some idioms that add a touch of whimsy and imagination to our language.
Ooh, I love whimsical idioms.
Me too.
They're so delightful because they invite us to see the world through a more playful and imaginative lens.
For example, kick the bucket. We already talked about its morbid humor.
Right.
But there's also a playful absurdity to the image of someone literally kicking a bucket before they die.
It's like a little linguistic wink, a reminder that even serious topics can be approached with a touch of humor and lightness.
And what about piece of cake? It's such a dismissive way to describe something that's easy or effortless. It's as if you're saying, this is so simple. Yeah. It's like eating a slice of cake.
It's a great example of how idioms can use everyday objects and experiences to convey abstract concepts.
Yeah.
And it highlights that human tendency to downplay difficulty or make light of challenges.
And then there's break a leg, the classic theatrical idiom for wishing someone good luck.
Oh, yeah.
It's so counterintuitive, but that's part of its charm.
It's thought to have originated from the superstition that wishing someone good luck would actually bring them bad luck.
Oh, really?
So by saying break a leg, you're essentially reversing the curse.
Oh, it's like a linguistic double bluff.
Exactly.
A way to outsmart fate and ensure a successful performance.
And it speaks to that enduring power of superstition and ritual, even in the modern world.
Okay, let's wrap up this segment with a few more whimsical idioms that are sure to tickle your funny bone.
I love it.
For example, have a frog in your throat. That one always makes me giggle.
Oh, it's so vivid.
It's such a vivid and slightly gross way to describe having a hoarse voice.
Yeah, it perfectly captures that croaky, scratchy feeling when you can barely speak.
And it's a reminder that language can be both descriptive and delightfully absurd.
Absolutely.
And what about butterflies in your stomach? It's such a sweet and fluttery way to describe that feeling of nervous anticipation or excitement.
It's a beautiful metaphor for the physical sensations we experience when we're feeling anxious or excited.
Yeah.
And it highlights that interconnectedness of our minds and bodies.
Okay, one last one before we move on. Cost an arm and a leg.
Ooh, yes.
It's such an exaggerated way to describe something that's very expensive, as if you're literally sacrificing limbs to afford it.
It's a humorous exaggeration that emphasizes the high cost of something.
Yeah.
And it reflects that human tendency to use hyperbole to express strong emotions or make a point.
All right, we've explored a whole menagerie of whimsical idioms. It's amazing how these playful expressions can add a touch of humor, imagination, and surprise to our language.
Indeed, they remind us that language is not just a tool for communication, but also a source of creativity, entertainment, and endless fascination.
All right, I think it's time to tackle another big category of idioms, those that help us navigate the world of work and business.
Yeah, excellent suggestion. These idioms can be so valuable in professional settings. They can really add a touch of polish to your communication and convey those complex ideas with nuance and efficiency.
For example, back to the drawing board, it's the perfect way to acknowledge a setback.
Yeah.
Without dwelling on the negativity.
Right.
It signals a willingness to reassess, regroup, and come up with a fresh approach.
Exactly. And the ball is in your court is a classic idiom for delegating responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
It clearly indicates who's in charge of taking the next step without sounding bossy or demanding.
And I'm also a big fan of think outside the box.
Oh, for sure.
It's a call to creativity and innovation. It encourages us to challenge assumptions, explore unconventional ideas, and come up with solutions that go beyond the obvious.
It's such a valuable mindset to cultivate in any profession.
Yeah.
It reminds us that true progress often requires a willingness to break free from conventional thinking.
Okay, here's one that I've definitely experienced a few times. Bite off more than you can chew.
Oh, yeah.
It perfectly captures that feeling of taking on too much and feeling completely overwhelmed.
It's a good reminder to be realistic about our limits and not overcommit ourselves.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to focus on a few things and do them really well than to spread ourselves too thin.
Absolutely. And what about cut corners? That one has a slightly negative connotation.
That does.
Suggesting that someone is sacrificing quality or integrity to save time or effort.
It's definitely an idiom to be wary of in a professional setting.
Right.
While it might be tempting to take those shortcuts, it's important to maintain those high standards and uphold those ethical principles.
So let's say you've been working hard on a project and you're finally ready to present it to your team.
Okay.
What idiom would you use to describe that feeling of excitement and anticipation?
Ooh, get the ball rolling would be a great choice.
Yeah.
It conveys that sense of momentum and progress, suggesting that things are moving forward.
I love it. And what about that moment when a team is working together seamlessly? Everyone's in sync and aligned towards a common goal.
Ooh, on the same page. Perfectly captures that sense of unity and shared understanding.
Yeah.
It implies that everyone's working towards those same objectives with clarity and purpose.
And after a long day of meetings, emails, and deadlines, what's the best idiom to signal that it's time to pack up and head home?
Oh, call it a day is a classic way to announce the end of the workday.
Love that.
It suggests a sense of accomplishment and closure, signaling that it's time to rest and recharge.
Okay, a few more before we move on. What about climb the corporate ladder?
Yeah, that one evokes that image of upward mobility and career progression. It suggests this clear path to success, with each rung of the ladder representing a higher level of responsibility and achievement.
And what about hit the ground running? That one implies a sense of urgency and preparedness, suggesting that someone's ready to tackle a new challenge with energy and enthusiasm.
It's often used to describe someone who's starting a new job or a new project and is just eager to make an immediate impact.
Okay.
It conveys a sense of proactiveness and a willingness to take initiative.
Okay, last one for this category, learn the ropes.
Ooh, yes.
It's a great way to describe the process of acquiring those new skills and knowledge, especially in a new job or role.
It's like you're becoming familiar with the tools and techniques of a particular trade.
Yeah.
It suggests a willingness to learn and a commitment to mastering the essentials.
Well, we've covered so much ground today, exploring over 150 English idioms.
We have.
It's incredible how these colorful expressions enrich our language
Really.
and give us this unique perspective on the human experience.
I think it's been a delightful journey through the world of words.
I agree.
And I hope our listeners have gained a newfound appreciation for the power of idioms to add depth, humor, and nuance to their communication.
So the challenge for you, dear listener, is to take at least one of these idioms and use it in a conversation today. You might be surprised at how easily they roll off your tongue and how much they enhance your communication.
Absolutely.
And remember, the world of idioms is constantly evolving.
That's right.
New phrases are being coined all the time.
Yes.
Reflecting the ever-changing nature of language.
Keep your ears open.
Yeah, so keep your ears open, stay curious, and who knows, you might even invent the next great English idiom.